You've noticed that your monthly food basket is costing you more. The latest Household Affordability Index by the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group shows that food prices increased in August, and food basket prices over the last 12 months have risen by 10%. Well, to talk further about this, I'm joined now by Mervyn Abrahams, the program coordinator for the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. To many people, good afternoon first, Mervyn. To many people, 10% might not sound like a lot, but if you every month trying to make ends meet, that 10% adds up quite a bit, and you buying the same amount of food, but it's costing you 10% more, then it means you must buy 10% less, which is a big knock.
Good afternoon, Dan. Yes, I mean, I would like the viewers just to consider it from the perspective that food has increased by 10%, and most wages in South Africa have increased by 4.5% or less. So we have 5.5% less amount of money in our pockets, while food and electricity and transport have all increased way above the amount of increases in household incomes. And it is that which is driving an affordability crisis, not only for low-income households, but also in particular for people living in the middle class.
Yeah, and headline inflation, according to Stats SA and the Reserve Bank, is still sitting between 3 and 5%, which means the food price inflation is twice the headline inflation. That's hitting us in the pocket big time.
Exactly. When we consider that a basket of 44 very basic foods constructed for a household of 7 persons had increased by 103 Rand and 69 cents month on month, and now stands at 4,241 Rand. That is more than a national minimum wage in South Africa. So if somebody earns at the level of the national minimum wage, they will not be able to afford that basket of food, even if they spend every single cent they earn.
Now, which food items are mostly affected? I mean, you mentioned a basket of 44 core food items that are most frequently purchased by lower income households. Which, just give us some examples.
So if we look, for instance, month on month at maize meal. So maize meal over the last month increased by 2 Rand and 36 cents. Now, somebody will say that that's not a lot. But when you look at it over a 12-month period, it is 13% more expensive now than it was 12 months ago. When we look at 10 kilograms of white sugar, it increased by 7 Rand month on month, and it is now 10% more expensive than a year ago. 10 kgs of potatoes, 21% more than a year ago. Butternut, 18%. But when you look at something like sugar beans, which is really important as a protein, now that has increased year on year by 49%. 25 loaves of brown bread is now 4% more expensive than it was a year ago, and cake flour was 3% more than it was a year ago. So right across the board, we have seen that about 33 of our 44 foods increased between the months of July and the month of August.
Yeah, and I mean, you've mentioned examples of really the basics. While I have you, Mervyn, very briefly, from your research, from your knowledge, what are the key factors that are driving these food prices to go up so much?
So there are a number of drivers, Dan. Number one, global prices of cereals have increased. What has happened during COVID-19 at the beginning of the pandemic was that governments had released lots of food into the system to keep prices low, particularly in China and in other parts of Europe. Now they are restocking, and so they are buying up maize, for instance, grown in South Africa, wheat grown in other parts of the country, and that is making a global increase. So that's the first driver. The second driver of the food prices of fuel. We have seen massive increases in the price of petrol. That has a direct impact on the price of food because petrol is used right across the value chain. So that's a second driver. And then perhaps one of the third drivers is that the food price spiked highest in the areas where there was social unrest last month, in Johannesburg, Pietermaritzburg, and Durban. And part of that was with the locking of the supply chain, the reopening of the supply chain, and the restocking has meant that there were greater demands than supply, and that pushed up food prices as well.
Yeah, at this level, the trend is not looking good. Very briefly, Mervyn, from your past experience, you've been tracking food prices in South Africa, your group, for quite some time. Can we look forward to some relief? Are any items coming down price-wise?
So we are hoping, we should see a stabilization and possibly a decrease with petrol prices coming down as well, and there is going to be a decline in global prices. So all the indicators show that over the next month or two, we should be able to see a reduction in prices, but really it is an affordability crisis. It is the amount of income versus the expenditure. And unless we see significant income increases, we are still going to have this crisis into the foreseeable future.
Thank you very much, Mervyn Abrahams. He's, of course, the program coordinator for the Pietermaritzburg Economic Justice and Dignity Group. We are in the middle of an affordability crisis, he says.